Yo, YouTube, what's going on? I'm Crash, and this is the Crash Out React Show. What's going on with y'all, boys? Thank you for clicking on the video. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing heated debate with Tim Pool on the nature of God, and this is Andrew Wilson. He's debating here with. I don't know who Tim Pool is, but I really like Andrew Wilson. I like listening to him in my free time. I found him from the Whatever podcast, so if you want to check him out, go ahead, check them out. Shout out to them because they real cool. They make good videos. You know, I like listening to Andrew because I for real feel like I get better with just talking and linguistics and understanding because the way he breaks things down in debate is very clear cut. It's almost like he doesn't play any games, you know, he's not trying to fool anybody. He's like really presenting his facts, and it's just, you know, not comforting, refreshing to see somebody with like no real agenda. Of course, everything is, you know, motivated, but at the same time, he speaks from a pure space, I believe. I believe. I'm not sure. I don't know the man. Anyway, though, I do like listening to him. And the reason I want to bring up this topic is just to get like people thinking about God. My number one thing about society is the belief in God. I believe is an old world system. I believe it's the first way to really govern people. It was the first form of government. So I would just like to start seeing it break down in society a little bit more and finding new ways of doing things, because at the end of the day, I find religion to be very divisive. And I think first attacking, you know, the nature of God himself is a great way to do that. Maybe I'm a be a philosophy channel now. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for clicking. If you like what I got going on here, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because I got more content coming all the way. More content just like this. I'm gonna try to be done with the pop the balloons and stuff like that. I'm gonna try to find fun videos, fun topics, but it just won't be pop the balloon. I'm gonna still talk about dating. It just won't be pop the balloon anymore. If you notice that I'm wearing the same stuff as the last videos because I'm sick, I really don't feel well. Like, I have been pooping like crazy. It's been really nasty. You would have thought somebody was pouring out the ocean upstairs because it's just unholy. It's unholy. Anyway, pray for me, guys, and let's get right into this video.
I think you're an atheist.
Okay, well, that makes no sense.
Making the best. You're making the best case argument for atheism I've ever heard.
How?
That God is what we experience in the universe is what we would describe as God. It is the definition of everything atheists have ever argued to me.
I'm not even making arguments to you right now. All I'm doing is expressing to you
God
that
is not all powerful.
No, the opposite.
You said God can't create a boulder he cannot lift.
No, because
every single priest
do you know what
and theologian I've talked to has said the opposite.
No, none of them. Their dogma literally would prevent them from defying the nature of God. Not a single theologian on planet Earth who's a priest has ever said to you, Tim, God could create a God more powerful than him. That never happened.
No, they said
it's not possible.
And that is like a great way to just highlight the biggest problem with Christianity as a whole is the divisiveness of doctrine. There's different denominations within Christianity. So some people believe God can create a boulder that he can't lift because he's all powerful. So, but that would mean that he's not powerful enough to lift a boulder though. So it is a conundrum. It's a paradox. And when something is paradoxical in nature, you have to start thinking, is this even real then? How can all powerful being can't exist because he would be able to create things that are more powerful than him because he has the power to do so. So it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
So my question is for Andrew, and hopefully I can at least partially satiate your desire to argue. So this is kind of going back to when you were here with Tim last time, and you were talking about the existence or not of rights.
Yes.
And so a friend of mine who is also a fan of yours, who showed me some of your videos. So the first one was your conversation with Dave Smith. We've kind of had a prolonged conversation about the existence of rights, him taking more of your perspective, I'm disagreeing. And then we were both kind of interested to see what you would say with this. So
we'll start with what a right is.
Yes, okay. So like I'm totally down to agree with you that a right is an entitlement without duty.
Okay.
And then my perspective would be that the existence of the obligations that we can both exist necessarily creates rights. And we both agree that you have an obligation not to me, I have an obligation to not you. You have an obligation to wherever you are speaking to me, speak the truth, not lie. I don't. Same obligation.
Like you've already made supposed axioms that I don't agree with. You've already created suppositions that I don't agree with. So where does the obligation that I don't you come from?
I
No,
think
we
they're
both-
saying pew 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 pew.
Do we not agree that God gives an obligation to both of us? No, I didn't say. I said
Yeah. Then
Wait, you have a right to not someone?
no,
No,
he's
not a
saying he said there's an obligation not to.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Where's this obligation to not do a thing?
Oh yeah, I would say Exodus.
Yeah, okay.
Like
So you're saying you're looking at it through the prism of Christian ethics.
Oh yeah, both of us, like we all come from the same
Okay, I
perspective.
see. So
like
you're-
all the Christian fundamentals, like we might have minor doctrinal differences, but like I'm
it.
totally good to agree with you on all
got
the Christian fundamental presuppositions. So
Okay.
yeah, so I'm not disagreeing on that point. My point being that when God goes and gives you an obligation to not murder me and me an obligation
a
to not
duty?
murder you, and,
A duty?
yes, sure. Duties. You have a duty to not murder me. I have a duty to not murder you, and so on, and and similar other things like you to not lie to me to not lie to you. These things, these create rights, just by the instantiation of the obligation or by the duty.
That's now okay. If you were to put this in a syllogism, that wouldn't actually make any sense, right?
duties aren't right,
So
right?
just because you say if you say you have a duty, you were given a duty to not or me, that does not then instantiate that you have a right to not be by me. That's where you're making a fundamental mistake. Where does that right come from?
Yeah, so this is where
I have the
there's my friend and I,
obligation, but you don't have any right.
They don't have the right to defend themselves.
Don't even have a right to do that.
Well, shit,
you can defend yourself,
Yeah,
or does it become a right?
Or you
So
can-
the thing is like, where does the duty form into the right process? That's what I'm asking.
yeah, it's that you basically can't have one without the other.
How? Why not?
Yeah, so I would say, well, I guess I would start with, I would say, well, I have then an entitlement to not be, and we could go and look at particulars of
Yeah,
like how the
okay.
biblical.
But
so,
I'll just
so,
say
okay,
this.
so
It
like,
sounds to me like you're not a Christian. The argument you're proposing is that Christianity is subjective and only partial. Therefore, the right cannot exist because God's law, God's word, is not mandate for all.
Right? Are you asking me?
That's what I hear from you.
Oh no.
When he says
The
God-
opposite. I'm saying
No.
that God is giving you a sequence of duties, not any way any rights.
When God says, "Thou shalt not,"
That's a duty.
the presumption is that we, under God's law, are protected from being.
Nope.
Wait.
Where's that presumption?
I don't know if
The
I
presumption is that
I think
that
the
God is
logic
for-
follows. I think, yeah, if God says don't kill people, then I should have, then I have the right to live, because you shouldn't be. I mean, now if he's speaking in just more general terms, as a form of punishment, maybe, because that was also in the Bible, which is why it's kind of crazy that it's so paradoxical that people don't see it, But yeah, God says don't murder, but then he allows people to for crime. So maybe that's where he's going with it. But I think the logic follows that if something is outlawed, then that means I have the right to the opposite. So if public nudity is outlawed, then I have the right to not see you butt naked in the street. That's my right. I expect it. And if somebody infringes on it, I expect somebody to come handle that. So I think it is a right.
ordered you not to.
Yeah, that's right.
Thou shalt
God
not.
has ordered me not to kill you.
Right. So there's
Why does that suppose
my entitlement
that
God
you're
has told you
entitled to not
do
get?
it. Because God told you not to do
No,
it.
God told. Okay, that makes no sense.
Explain.
Well, how does
Just
it
say that, just
how
explain.
does it follow? You would have to
Literally,
hang on,
God says you can't do it.
hang on. You'd have to demonstrate how it follows that if God says I cannot do a thing, that means you have a right to a thing.
Yes.
Thou shalt not buy a house, but you have a right to.
You have free will. You can violate God's law all you want if you're not a Christian, which is the argument you're making. People who are not Christians will violate God's law, God's word.
well,
So then
if
it's
I
not
can
a right.
interject there, I would even go. I would even go one
The
further
presumption
than
that
Tim.
you're, I don't understand what you're trying to say, that rights are things that are impossible to happen in the real world.
No, I'm saying that a right is a
Entitlement.
absent a duty.
Uh-huh.
And I'm saying
Yes.
that the things that
So if you are a Christian,
Hang
you
on,
can't.
yeah, that's a duty. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree that Christians have duties. What I don't agree with is that Christians have rights. So there's no real right to life. You could die at birth, right? You don't really have a right to do this. And also, God's nature can't be contrary.
You
So
think babies don't have a right to life?
I see what he's saying. So what he's actually saying is that there's that a right is absent duty. So if everybody in America has a duty not to kill each other, that's a duty, then you don't have a right to live in his eyes. Which is kind of, I don't know how he can really reconcile that, because then yes, that would be from the value of the principle of life is precious, life is good, we need people around so we can replenish society and keep going and have more babies. So is bad not from just a moral perspective, but from a structural perspective, from a financial and mathematical perspective. So I think I'm understanding where he's coming with this, but still, even the fact that this is a law would reflect the moral value of the society that set that law. That society clearly values life and thinks life is a right. You don't have to do anything to live in America. If you were born, you just keep living. There's nothing, oh, you didn't make enough money today, so the government's lining you up, And it could be like that. It could be like that.
To life, you could die at birth, right? You don't really have a right to do this. And also, God's nature can't be contrary.
You think babies don't have a right to life?
Well, hang on. I'll explain. God's nature can't be contrary. You agree with that, right?
Elaborate what you mean by that.
So God
Can't contradict himself?
Yeah, he can't make a God more powerful than him.
I disagree with it.
What?
So you're talking about, good God created a stone so heavy he himself cannot lift it. God can do anything.
That's incoherent.
It's not. Logic only exists within the confines of God's word. God's word is beyond your comprehension.
No, logic is a transcendental category, and since it's a transcendental category, we know it exists even though it's not physical. But all things bind by it. Part of God's nature has
is Jesus
to.
God?
Yes.
Would Jesus be able to lift a 5-ton boulder?
Yeah.
Then
there's no contradiction there.
So certainly Jesus did perform miracles.
But there's no contradictions with those. So those follow the lines of logic. God's nature still has to be logical because it's part of his nature. His ontology is logic.
So my point is,
you're saying God can make a burrito that's so big he can't eat it?
Of course.
What? That's incoherent. That's like
it's literally not.
It is. It's totally. That's literally the definition of incoherence. It's totally incoherent.
Literally not. I'm gonna explain.
No, sadly, Andrew, what you're saying is incoherent. Sadly, I have to side with Tim here because, yeah, God is very inconsistent, paradoxical, like I've been saying. And this really, again, boils down to the whole denominational thing and believing in one doctrine versus another. But what Andrew was saying here is that God is made up of logic. He said anatomically, something like that. He said one of those big words I can't say, but I know what it means. I know what it means. But but basically he's saying God is comprised of logic. Without logic, there is no God. So basically he's saying logic precedes God. In almost every Bible, every religion, of course I've been with Protestants. I really haven't looked into Orthodoxy or Catholicism. I know a little bit about Catholicism, but not that much about Catholicism. But yeah, they definitely hold those different beliefs of a God being that much powerful. I mean, there's even a scripture, I'm gonna put it up on the screen, where it says God is the creator of good and evil. God and he creates. He's the cause. I forgot what scripture it was. I believe it was in Psalms, but it said God is the cause of both evil and good. So God has already, put in his Bible, put in his word that he is a paradoxical creature. He is a paradoxical, it won't make sense if you think about it too hard. And that's where you get to these things, because you get this word where it says, oh yeah, God is the most powerful and he can do anything, including turning himself into a human. And then that human that he is now can perform things that nobody else is able to do. So it is very paradoxical, but at the same time, it can follow. So I understand what Tim is saying, that God can create a burrito that he can't eat. But at the same time, that would make him less powerful. He would not be the most powerful thing, even if it's just by size. This thing holds way more mass than God now. It holds way more energy than God, because that's how, the logic of the universe works. So even no matter which thread you follow here, it unravels. It doesn't make sense. It It just doesn't.
Did not have, okay, go ahead.
So I can use,
In
I
my
can use an
eyes.
example like programming, for instance.
Okay.
I can program a video game in which I have absolute authority over the whole thing. I can change the rules at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Within the confines of this game, I can create a rock that my avatar cannot move.
Sure.
I can program it so that my mouse can't move
I'll
it
grant it.
until I go into the BIOS.
And you
change
both
it.
program the video game and not program the video game?
Yes. What do you mean?
What? How do So you can make a video game that you never made.
What are you trying to say?
Can you make a video game that you never made?
Yes.
What?
What do you mean? I've made.
That's direct
I literally can
contradiction.
only make games I've never made. I don't make the same game twice.
No. Can you
Unless
both
it's a
make a
sequel.
game while at the same time you're not making the game?
But I don't understand.
Can the game exist and at the same time not exist?
There is a reality where yes, quite literally, it's called the paradox. Paradoxes are things that exist within the confines of our logical.
No, that's a
reality.
contradiction. A paradox is different than a contradiction. Tim, you cannot both be me and you. You can only be you.
You don't know that.
Well, yeah, I do, because it would violate
So
the law of non-contradiction.
So this is where I feel like you're running into a problem. You
Okay.
think you know God.
No, I only understand that God has to have a nature, an ontological nature.
And
like
you don't
everything.
and what you think you know of God,
God
is
tells us his
looking
nature.
looking through a keyhole through a 800 bedroom
It's
mansion.
just based on what God tells us his nature is.
Yes, and God can't you can't comprehend higher dimensions. It's
Yeah,
physically impossible.
This is an energy. What you're talking about is what's called an essence energy distinction. I agree with you that I can only participate in the energy of God, but I cannot understand the essence of God. That I agree with.
I don't think you're a Christian.
Okay.
You
What?
There's a simple question.
This is Catholic dogma, Tim.
What he's saying is true, though. He comes with the presupposition that he understands God. He's so confident that God is a logical being that he will say that, and for whatever reason, he thinks that's okay to say as a Christian. From when I was a Christian, I was taught to understand that God was a mysterious being, that God was outside the bounds of logic. God created logic. There was nothing before God. God created logic and order. And I believe that to be the case. I believe in a different form of God. I believe that God is literally just consciousness, intelligence, the intelligence in our cells, the intelligence in atoms, because everything is running in patterns, because everything has a time. You can trace things and it will happen. And those things will cause a chain of events that will create something much bigger than itself. You know, like, I can go on, but I believe the true nature of God is simply just consciousness or intelligence itself. The ability to understand for objects to understand things outside of itself. Like, you are an object. Technically, without your body, you could not be conscious of this. However, consciousness is nowhere to be found within biology. You can probe the brain all day long. You will never find a trace of consciousness, a single unit of understanding. There was new research that recently came out showing that when people die that have already been heart dead, but now they're taking them off oxygen and stuff like that, when they get to that point, the brain is no longer receiving blood. But for whatever reason, the brain goes into gamma waves. You would think a dying brain would slowly drain down its energy. It would slowly wind down its energy. That's not what the brain does when you die. When you die, the brain actually expands. It goes higher because our brains are. I'm not gonna go into it too much, but I truly believe that what God is just consciousness, intelligence of things outside of itself. And it's so hard to say that because we would never understand the true nature of God, of consciousness, of intelligence. Because what we say God is really what we're saying. When we say God, we're saying source. Where did we come from? That is the biggest question of humanity, you know? But to sit here and say that you know for sure God is a logical being, logical through the eyes of humans, logical through the eyes of creatures that don't even see the full universe. There are things in the universe that we know are there, but we can't see, can't detect. We know something is in those dark spaces, but there's no way to even know what its mass is, how big it is. We have no idea because it's outside of our logic. Yet it exists. Yet it is there, but it's not there. in a human's mind. So you cannot sit and say for 100% certainty that you understand the nature of God. Nobody walking the earth ever will. Anybody who tells you that they've seen God, that they understand God, and God has given them great revelations, might be lying to you. Because that is how they control people. But let's
I
keep
don't
going.
think you're a Christian because you're disagreeing with
not.
me on the nature of the.
Can God create a boulder so heavy that he himself cannot lift it?
No.
God exists outside of the confines of this logic in which you think you exist. God is so far beyond you, you cannot comprehend this. To ask if God can lift a rock is asking like, it's a stupid question because we are one tretragillionth of the universe, and you are presupposing God lives in your rules. That is reductivist, earthly, one-dimensional thinking.
Yeah. So you're saying there's universes where there could be contradictions.
I'm saying
Could I interject here with a question on the nature of God for Tim? Tim, do you think that God could be, instead of a supreme good, supreme evil?
I don't know that there is such a distinction. God, as the creator of all things, is not going to be good nor evil.
What?
I'm not a Christian.
But I mean, it would. Okay. So.
Well,
So
no. I'm not.
so the
even
thing is like what
I'm
you're
not even
saying,
asking-
what you just said is, I understand the nature of God.
No.
I understand that this being who lives in this different dimension that I could never fathom.
I'm saying
could
God
neither
doesn't-
be evil nor good. That's you making a
Bro.
declaration that you understand the nature of God.
No, it's that I would not describe God as good or evil because God exists outside the confines of human comprehension.
Okay.
To
and can
assert
exist in
that-
contradiction?
Because
If I could-
contradiction exists only within our reality.
No.
You cannot comprehend what exists outside of the
Literally, the
capacity
laws
of
of logic do not actually exist physically in our reality. They're transcendental. They're transcendental categories.
It,
They govern physically in our reality.
what exists outside of the capacity
Literally, the
of
laws
your
of logic do not actually exist physically in our reality. They're transcendental. They're transcendental categories.
It-
They govern our
mind.
reality,
I
but they
don't
don't
think you're
exist.
Christian.
Then I don't understand how. Andrew, explain yourself, guy.
Okay, what? Well, this is all.
You're saying
this is
God
all Christian
has
dogma.
to follow these rules. Period.
No, I'm saying that God has a nature like Tim has a nature. Like, for instance, okay, your nature as Tim, the things that make up you. You have a heart and you have lungs and you have things like this. And your heart and your lungs and things like this do work inside of your body that assist your body in moving and functioning and this and that. They're part of what you are. To take all of those things out would change who you are. Okay? This is the same thing with God. We're just saying that there's a part of God's nature which he has shared with us as part of his nature.
Only part.
As the Logos. The Logos, part of it is logic.
Only part.
Yeah, but that would mean that part of God's nature is to not violate logic.
Did God create?
So I think what he's saying is that God is a bigger source of energy, a bigger being, and that we are a part of God, whether through direct connection or through association through Jesus Christ. It really doesn't matter because there's a part of God that is logical. So while there may be parts of God and universes and dimensions that would make no sense because we live in a dimensional, a logical reality, because we live in the part of God that is logical, now everything within its locality cannot be illogical. I think that's what he's saying. But still, that would still point to a perspective bias, or I don't even know the correct term, but basically your perspective is influencing your worldview, is influencing what you think is true, but you already admitted that something bigger can be true without itself. But he says if you also take it away, now it is no longer that thing. And that kind of comes down to the ship of Theseus thing, you know, how much do I need to replace of you for you not to be you anymore? You know, you can have surgery and get a new kidney, but you retain your consciousness. Your consciousness doesn't alter. You're not a new person. You don't die. I mean, you can, but you can get a new body part and keep living. You can accept somebody else's blood and keep living, same memories, you know. I believe what we are as beings are emanations of God. Not that God is beyond us. We are God. We are endowed with his spirit. But at the same time, we are parts of God that have accepted a certain way of life, accepted a certain way of being. It's just hard to really understand. I believe God is a one singular conscious. This one singular conscious, for whatever reason, has decided to split itself up. Why this consciousness is split up? Maybe it is just to maintain itself, understand itself and its nature. And maybe that's what we are. We're just learners of us. And that's pretty much all humans do. But then you have to also reconcile the fact that, there's animals. But animals can just be, another part of God. So I believe that every living conscious thing is an emanation of God. We are lesser parts of him, but had that direct tie to a higher being. That's why you can feel God. That's why there's paranormal activities and stuff like that, because there's still trace reminders that we are connected to him. I just believe that humans have long lost the way of naturalism, the way of spirituality, that we don't see it anymore. Confirmation bias, whatever you want to call it. What is it called? I forgot what it's called, but when you believe something so much, it becomes real, So if you stop thinking about God, you put it off, you don't want to talk about God or think about the existence and true nature, you never will. You become wrapped up in the matrix and you lose yourself. I believe that 100%. 100%. I'm really long-winded here, but he was also mentioning logos being God, which is Greek philosophy. When the Greeks got their hands on Christianity, they turned it into logos. I believe the Romans really doubled down on it. I could be wrong. It might have been the Romans first, but it was either the Greeks or the Romans. They really introduced this whole logic as being God, because that's what the New Testament is. New Testament introduces a new God named Jesus, or Yeshua, whatever you want to call him. It introduces this new God that is so paradoxical to the nature of the other God. It's contradictory to the nature of the other God. It's insane. But yeah, that's what he's referencing when he says Jesus is logic, God is logic, because that's literally how the Orthodox believe. They believe that God is a logical being. So that it just wow.
This universe,
a lot of
or is this
information.
universe a function of God?
God created the universe.
So God could change the rules?
Well, no, that would be illogical.
God could not change the rules of the universe.
No, it would go contrary to. So it's like what you're asking me is this: what would it be like if fire wasn't hot? Well, now we've changed the fundamental reality of what fire is.
So I'll simplify it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe our reality. First of all, what we think we know in science, there are higher dimensions we can't perceive. This implies, as most scientific discoveries in the last 130 years, if we choose to believe them, for instance, the electromagnetic spectrum. Humans, or air is my favorite example. Humans did not know that air existed because they couldn't perceive it until there was this guy who was showering who realized that there is matter in and all around us. There have been numerous instances where humans realize that things we can't perceive exists. Mm-hmm. And that is indicative of humans don't know nearly enough about the universe, and that we do know. The discovery of the charged electromagnetic spectrum revolutionized human thought because we didn't realize that what we touch, smell, see, and hear as reality is less than a millionth or a billionth of what reality actually is.
Or a trillionth. Or a trillionth. Who knows? Yeah.
And not understanding dark matter, we are a speck in a massive universe on the ass of a mosquito relative to what God is or could be. Humans saying, I know the nature of God, is arrogance that defies the idea of what we know we are limited in thinking. That is, the average person thinks infinity is a number.
Yeah, but that makes,
go to the average person,
that makes no sense, because all the things that you're saying right now and attributes are trying to define the nature of God, even though you don't think you are. If you're saying, so for instance, if you say,
want to put God in a box, I'm saying God
no,
exists beyond
it's the opposite. So if you say God is so complex you can't understand it, you have actually given me criteria for the nature of God. If you say God is timeless,
lack of knowledge.
Yeah, if you say God is timeless, you've given me criteria for the nature of God. If you say God exists in the 19th dimension, you have now expressed the nature of God. So what we're doing is the same exact thing. I'm expressing to you the biblical nature of God. What God expresses to us is part of his nature.
You're making an atheist argument to me.
It's not atheist.
So
it's the opposite. It's dogma.
Atheists are the ones who argue to me that the universe is mathematical, logical, cold, and it is what it is. It is functions as such.
No, they're physicalists. I
And
would argue the opposite.
Einsteinian God, which is an atheist view, is the view that that God is a God of science and that exists as some form of the universe. And then my view of God is that God exists beyond, and that our concepts of physics are just components of what God has created, and God is likely beyond our own perception and comprehension.
But you've said a bunch of things here that have entailments. God creates. So we know that for sure, right?
And in science, nothing can
So
be created.
hang on. So if God creates, and God was the first thing, then that means God was uncreated.
Yes.
Yeah. So if God was uncreated, and God created, now we know something about the nature of God.
Certainly.
Yeah. So this is my whole point. And so we could say the same thing, right? Same thing here.
I think you're an atheist.
Okay. Well, that makes
you're
no sense.
making the best. You're making the best case argument.
Yeah,
for
that
him.
wasn't a good argument. He really, like, Andrew's on the defensive here. He's really trying to point at the fact that if you're saying we can, what's the word? Understand the nature of God. If we can, linguistinize, put it into language, the nature of God, then I can do the same. And then he's trying to run off with his dogma, and he calls his stuff dogma, but what he is doing is even more dogmatic. It's like you're trying to force this worldview. You're just trying to. I don't know.
I've ever heard.
How?
That God is what we experience in the universe is what we would describe as God. It is the definition of everything atheists have ever argued to me.
I'm not even making arguments to you right now. All I'm doing is expressing to you
God
that
is not all powerful.
No, the opposite.
You said God can't create a boulder he cannot lift.
No, because
Every single priest
do you know what
and theologian I've talked to has said the opposite.
no, none of them. Their dogma literally would prevent them from defying the nature of God. Not a single theologian on planet Earth who's a priest has ever said to you, Tim, God could create a God more powerful than him. That never happened.
No, they said
it's not possible.
To claim to understand the power of God is arrogance to assert that you know what God
I'm
could
not
or could
saying
not
what
do.
the power of God is. I don't know exactly what the limits of all powerful are.
No, you're saying
All
that this reality is a part
Yeah.
of God and is what it is, and it's uncontradictory and unchanging.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that the laws of logic, right? The law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle, are part of the nature of God. We know this because this is how God created everything and how God expressed to us he creates. So if that is the case, we can understand that that's part of God's nature. He will not defy his nature because it's his nature. Will not defy.
It's very interesting that he is saying this, because what he's saying to me sounds more Gnostic in view. Basically, the Gnostics believe in the Palroma, and within the Palroma, the One exists. The One is the Palroma, but he's also everything within the Palroma. Now, the Palroma has emanations of God. So there's God, and then there's, an emanation literally called logic. There's an emanation literally called understanding. An emanation literally called love. An emanation literally called wisdom. So it sounds like he has this Easter egg. Not Easter egg. I forgot what those things are called. Russian dolls or something. But that God basically gets bigger and bigger as you look up, and just gets smaller and smaller as you look down. I can definitely see how, from like a mathematical, scientific approach, you can look at the laws of the universe as emanations of God, God's will, God's spirit, God's force in action, like gravity, electromagnetism, the weak force, the strong force. Those are the four, I forgot what it's called, the four forces of the universe. So you can look at these four forces as qualities of God, the higher emanations of God. Not that there is no God outside of here. There is a bigger God. But within here, this is all we can extrapolate from God. This is all God is showing us. That's how I would see it.
The nature of God, as you described it, is the universe.
No, it's not the universe. The universe had a creator.
Yes, and
that creator had to be uncreated.
And the universe is a part of God.
No, that's a Gnostic belief.
That's what you just said.
No, I didn't say that at all.
You said
it's a Gnostic belief to believe that everything
logos
is
of the
parts
universe,
of
the
God.
logic, is a part of God.
No. Logic is part of God's nature. You're saying that because the universe is also governed by logical rules, that means that it's part of God. That doesn't even follow.
You literally
You said that.
No, the opposite. I'm saying the opposite of that.
So God is illogical.
No, that doesn't even make sense either. What you're saying, all these things you say, they don't follow from one another. So you have to back up to the beginning.
So you said the logos, God, the logic, God is non-contradictory.
Yeah.
What God cannot create a boulder that he himself cannot lift.
Yeah,
That is illogical.
no, because it's against its nature.
What does that mean?
It means that you can't do things which defy your nature because otherwise you wouldn't be you.
Explain his nature.
I just did. Part of his nature is the logos and the law of logic.
And
That's part of his nature.
That cannot be changed.
Yeah, I suppose God could change his nature, but why you can't change your nature? You wouldn't change your nature.
God can't change his nature.
You wouldn't change your nature. That's the right way to phrase it. You wouldn't change your nature.
Or can he not?
Could he?
Yes.
I don't know, but I don't think it matters because your nature is what matters.
So you agree with me?
No, I don't agree with you. What you're saying is antithetical to actual dogma.
No, the beginning of the conversation was me saying that God could change the rules as he's created them, and you said he could not.
No, because the entailment of could is a violation of nature. So if it's a violation in nature and you wouldn't, you might as well say couldn't.
That's not an argument to what I just said.
It is an argument. If I can't make Tim not be Tim because Tim has a nature. Could Tim, if I gave Tim a different nature, do a different thing than his nature? Yeah, sure.
So
what does that have to do with anything?
You think God is limited in his capability?
Well, you would have to tell me how that's limited.
God cannot affect the rules of his universe in a way that would defy your view of
Wouldn't.
logic.
And if he wouldn't, then he couldn't because he wouldn't.
That is not an argument.
Well, not only is it an argument, but Tim...
You are literally saying nothing.
Tim, you couldn't fly, right? Whether or not you would fly, okay, or could fly, if you wouldn't fly, you couldn't fly, right?
You're not saying anything.
Bro, what am I not saying?
Can God do thing
that are outside the violation of his nature? He won't do them, no.
What is his nature?
Part of his nature would be logic.
Okay.
Circles.
So what you're saying is there is a logical structure to God that he cannot change.
No. Could change. When you say
would not.
When you say potentiality for could, right? It's irrelevant to the view of will not.
He can do it. He doesn't want to do it.
Possible. I don't know because I don't understand the limitation of all powerful.
Which was my first point.
Yeah, but it just doesn't matter.
To assert that God could not do a thing because you can't understand it.
Yeah, because wouldn't here is what we're focusing on.
So how do you know that God wouldn't do a thing?
Because he told us.
What did he say?
Inside the Bible, he's
Specifically?
he's very descriptive about his nature and how he operates.
Tell me what he said.
We'd have to pull up the Bible so we could go over it.
This is such a weak argument. He's saying because God wouldn't do something, that means it also means he can't do something, which is the craziest shit in the world. Because God's mind in the Bible, the old God of the Old Testament, he had his mind changed multiple times. The biggest example comes to me by Abram, the man that changed his name to Abraham. He told God when he was about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, God said, I'm going to just kill everybody. I don't care if there's good people in the city. I'm going to just kill everybody, which is illogical for that God because that God, wow. but that's what God said. He said, I'm gonna destroy Sodom and Gomorrah no matter what. I don't care if there's good people in there. So why did it take a human person to beg and plead God and win and change his mind? Abram was like, what if there's 100? Okay, if there's 100, I won't. Oh, what if there's 50? Okay, if there's 50, I won't. What if there's just one? Okay, if it's just one, I won't. So God had his mind changed multiple times. Not even just once, but he had his mind changed multiple times about killing everybody in that city. Yet somehow, just because he was going to do that, means it also means... So what Andrew's saying here is completely contradictory to what is proven in the Bible. Because God was going to do something, but he did not. God could have did that, but he chose not to. It wasn't that... Because God was never ever going to do that, then it never ever could have happened, which is that's something totally different. I believe, I slightly believe in the cube theory where basically the whole universe has already happened. Time doesn't exist. Time is just a part of the physical reality that we can't actually see. But basically everything exists in this block. Everything that ever has happened is happening, will happen, and already has happened. The past isn't something that is gone. It's something that you can visit if you have the right access to it, basically. That's how I see what he's saying. What he's saying sounds a lot like cube theory, where just because God couldn't be something means it never would have been. Like, for instance, the Andromeda galaxy is going to collide with the Milky Way galaxy in billions of years. Actually, it's happening right now. It's happening right now. But this is something that it was always going to happen from the formation of the universe. When everything got hot and started spinning and started expanding, everything was set into motion. Everything was going to happen exactly how it was going to happen, because the physics in a vacuum behaves so differently that it's almost unchanging. Once the material starts spinning out, once the material starts spinning around and moving and getting hotter, it collides with things that were in its way, in its path, and was always destined to hit. These create planets, these create stars, these create life. Everything was going to happen in my eyes. I've also seen visions, I've also seen things that people would never believe me, but I 100% believe in like the cube theory of the universe, and that's what it sounds like he's saying.
Which part of the Bible?
Well, we would have to start with
I kinda believe
Genesis
in
and
it,
then
though.
go through
Not
the
really,
entire
but it's very
ontological nature
convincing.
expressed through the Trinity.
So you don't know.
Yeah, I do know. So, like,
can't
God
say.
is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and the end. We know that, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this would infer timelessness.
I suppose, right?
Yeah, if you're both the beginning and the end.
I don't know though.
If you're both those things at the
don't-
same time, then time can't apply to you, right?
Not necessarily.
How could time apply to you if you're the beginning of it and the end of it?
If it has a beginning and as an end, it has time.
No, not if you're the beginning and the end at the same time.
Is that what it says?
Yeah. If you are the beginning and the end.
My point is, I do not believe that it is possible for a human to understand the true nature of God,
Neither do we.
and that the assertion that God could not do a thing implies knowledge of God
Would not.
beyond the
Would not
comprehension.
do a thing.
But that makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. It's a basic ontological argument. The idea that you will not go beyond the confines of your nature, whether you could or not, has no bearing on anything.
Right. So if God can't do a thing, He's not all powerful.
It's not can't. You keep on using the word can't.
God
or
wouldn't.
could.
But
If I could interject here with an example, and this is why I asked the question about God being the ultimate good or ultimate evil. One example that I would give is God cannot be the ultimate evil. Kind of for what Andrew would say is this is a logical contradiction, because
Correct.
if God was the ultimate evil, then that would mean he is ultimately like he's the maximal being in all sorts of negative attributes. One of them being selfishness, another one being anger. Selfishness to the point of wanting to be the only being in existence, but anger to the point of wanting other beings to exist to torment them arbitrarily.
why does anger exist?
Why does anger exist?
Yes.
It's just
It's
a non sequitur. It has nothing to do with his argument.
It's
He just said
like it's an
he's
an attribute.
Right. He's
It's-
explaining that God can't be angry. So I'm asking, what is anger?
No,
Why
no,
does it exist?
no.
You didn't say that.
That's not what I said. What I said is God cannot be the ultimate evil. Because
Yes.
to be the ultimate evil
would have to be the anger
would mean
and-
you would have to be the maximal being in certain negative attributes that are going to conflict with each other.
Like what?
So imagine so like you're a comic book guy. So imagine that you had the ultimate Red Lantern meshed with the ultimate Orange Lantern. Those two character traits conflict with each other.
This is a bad example because you know about the White Lantern Corps.
Yeah, I'm not saying that
Bad
comic
example.
books are coherent logically. I'm saying you have two character traits
Colors.
that as the maximal being in both of these attributes cannot simultaneously exist.
It's a bad example because the White Lantern Corps is the merger of all the attributes into one. They all simultaneously coexist.
Guys, our Discord preacher, he wrote down, his name is Slick.
Yeah, that's a horrible thing, because like I said, the scripture I've already shown, God has literally said he is good and evil. God says he is Alpha and Omega. That's even Old Testament God. Jesus says he's come to cause division between families. Jesus has caused a lot of division in families. It's not even that he lied about it, you know? So I really don't see how they don't understand that this God is a contradiction, is a walking contradiction, and that's why they will never even understand it. Because it's even in the Bible. It's even in the Bible. He said he can't be the ultimate evil being, but if you are just the ultimate being, period, then you are. Then yeah, you are ultimate good and ultimate evil. The whole yin-yang concept is exactly that. There's good and evil and good, but they're all one. They're all the same thing. Not even on different sides. Same side of the same thing. You know, so I don't understand how he doesn't see this.
Malaki 3:6. His name is, I don't know his name, Malachi 3:6. For I am the, Malachi, thank you. For I am the Lord, I don't read the Bible. For I am the Lord, I do not change. Therefore you are not consumed, zero sons of Jacob.
Do not change. That's part of his nature.
And so the question
How's that
is,
do with the right to life that we started out with?
do we know 100?
That is a great question,
Do we know
Ryan.
God so absolutely that we can perceive him in full?
No,
No.
not it. Not it.
No, but we can know particular traits. So,
Yes,
for example,
correct.
Jesus in John 14 says
I
that
agree
he
with
is the
that.
way, the truth, and the life. So
Agreed.
this is saying that Jesus as God is the ultimate being in a positive attribute, that being truth.
If we can't conceive of God in his entirety, then we can't know everything other than what knowledge was bestowed upon us.
Yeah, but that's a knowledge claim, which presupposes God to begin with, because it's a knowledge claim.
God told us what he is, and through the Bible.
That's part of Revelation. Yeah.
And that's a Christian view. I'm not a Christian.
But how's that do with right?
But
We started off
wait a
with
second.
rights.
Whether you're a Christian or not,
I don't get it.
it would still have to be your view that God reveals himself to you somehow. That would be some form of revelation.
Indeed. I believe that we have the capability to observe that God exists through math, science, and observation.
Yeah,
of
but
the
why are
universe.
those attributes of God?
Which ones?
Are those attributes
Well,
of God?
I mean,
Math,
I would
science.
say the mathematics
think
part
so.
is just the logic.
I would say, simply put, outside of doctrine, you can look at the universe and then calculate based on the rules that there is a creator.
Yeah, it's just the watchmaker argument. So you just say, well, if you were a person who had no understanding of technology, but you found a watch on a beach and you picked it up,
That's literally
you
not.
would infer creation just by the way that
That's
the
not
watch
the argument.
operates. It's the same argument.
It
yeah.
is literally not.
Yeah, or you can say that mathematically, if you changed even one little teeny tiny thing, the
Not the
entire
argument.
universe would be thrown into disarray. What's the argument?
The argument is that there is negative entropy, and there is entropy, and that entropy only exists in greater elements of entropy. And what we end up finding throughout the universe, again, assuming you trust modern science, is that energy coalesces and disperses. I would say at a rate similar to the golden ratio. So it's a gradual.
And if you threw
Decay.
that off, it would throw everything into disarray.
Not what I'm talking about. So when you take a look at the basis components of the universe, in some degree they coalesce. So we can take a look at quarks, atoms, denser hydrogen becoming helium, et cetera, et cetera. You can see that so long as there is more entropy outputted from a system, entropy is possible. This scales up exponentially and mathematically, which is what humans have traced so far, again, if you believe modern science, because there's a lot we don't know. And you find that everything skews towards the creation of higher complex systems, so long as they create more disorder in the creation of complex systems. What that ultimately leads to is, simply put, atoms become elements, become compounds, become molecules, all finding other ways to interact to become increasingly more complicated and organizing free energy in the universe into a complex system. This is a fact.
I'm not sure how this is like an explanation or descriptor of the observation of revelation of God for you.
So what we see is that once you get to the point of self-replicating proteins, molecules come to a point where, and this is a gap for human knowledge, we don't know why at some point molecules will become self-replicating proteins. I don't think it's all that complicated because the question of why elements become compounds is the same thing. We don't care. Oxygen bonds with carbon, to oxygen, carbon dioxide. These things occur, and we can track the science of them. At a certain point, self-replicating proteins emerge if the chemical conditions are correct. Self-replicating proteins eventually become single-cell life. Single-cell life eventually becomes multicellular life. Within those complex systems, multicellular life eventually creates ecosystems. Now they're creating complex systems outside of physical energy and into abstract concepts, which only exist in our thoughts. Eventually, you'll end up with multicellular organisms.
But your thoughts do exist, you think?
To some degree, they do, because I think, therefore, I am.
Yeah, where do they exist, though?
That's the interesting question that humans don't really know, because this is the abstract, complex dynamic system created by the highest iteration of life as we know it, which is ourselves, unless there is an imperceivable higher form of life, which all mathematics predicts does exist. And so what we end up seeing with the universe is first you get chemicals that coalesce, you get organisms that reproduce, all of it collecting free energy and organizing into more complicated systems. Eventually you get a squirrel. Squirrel's a random example. But squirrels create more than just themselves by collecting free energy. They eat food, they make babies. That's replication.
What I don't
Squirrels
understand,
create ecosystems.
I actually don't understand right now, though.
Squirrels
I understand what
are planting nuts, which create trees.
Yeah.
I definitely understand what he's saying, and this is something that I've always observed, always noticed, that the smaller things get, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. What he's saying is, the way everything just comes together and tries to make it more complex. Everything just comes together. Information is being shared here. Bonds are being made. And it gets to the point that we're this complex. And this is probably as complex as naturally occurring elements can get. Outside of this, we have to start combining in ways of thoughts. So now we create society. And it's not just humans, it's even animals. Bees communicate with each other. Individual bees. These are all individual, separate, conscious bees that decide to work together. Just because. We're all individual, separate humans that decide to work together. It's not to say everybody, does that, because there are some animals and some humans and, that don't fit the mold and they're left out of society, for real. So it's definitely very indicative of the nature of God. That being, he's just probably a bigger part of us. For instance, if you work out and you take care of yourself, you eat healthy, the cells in your body do well. The chances of certain diseases drops. The development of certain pains and aches goes down. All if you just work out. If you decide as a higher consciousness to work out. This is something you have to do with your own will. This is not something your own body will do. Your own body does have its own things that it will do, but working out is not one of those. You, as the bigger being, have to do that for the goodwill of the rest of the living cells in your body. You are literally God to the cells in your body, but at the same time, you cannot live without the cells in your body. So if you treat your cells well, your cells will treat you well. The fact that you can even conceptualize this and understand it proves that there's a disconnect between consciousness and the body. It's not within the body. Because again, there are certain things your body will do and you don't have to think about it. Reflexes, management, controlling regulation, body temperature, stuff like that. So I definitely understand what Tim is saying here. I don't see why Andrew isn't.
A new abstract system emerges, a complex system between life that is beyond just a physical component. It is now including a physical component, but it has an abstract element to it, interactions between two objects. That accentuates further into the manipulation of an environment, which a lower life form would probably be a beaver.
Yeah, but how is any of this? What I don't understand, right, is those systems you just described, you've observed.
So beavers,
those you've observed,
start manipulating their environments and creating complex systems outside of life itself, where they're actually building dams. Dams interact with the environment in a way that's not necessarily life, but it collects free energy. Ultimately, we arrive to humans, where humans do something interesting in the creation of complex systems. They not only self-replicate, they not only create ecosystems, but they create abstract concepts to an extreme degree of complexity. And they not only do that, but they create internal micro simulations, which is computers and technology. All of this mathematical trend predicts higher forms of life beyond the capability to create abstract concepts, complex systems. Mathematically and probabilistically through observation, we could conclude the likelihood that life that exists beyond us, that has the capability to create systems of the universe itself, is more likely than not. So that in and of itself is a simple view of modern scientific observation into there is, in most likelihood, a life form of some sort or something beyond life that is a complex system that exists beyond us, that has the capability of not just creating abstract complex systems, but of creating complex systems itself. The singularity. The math points to a singularity of one ultimate power that has the capability to...
And that's what you believe is God.
I believe that it is suggestive of a God. My view of God is probably slightly beyond that. Into when I think of God, I bump into the limits of our ability to comprehend higher dimensions, in visualizing higher dimensions in two-dimensional planes, because we can't even do it in three-dimensional planes. And then you come to the ultimate point where we would conclude there is a higher power than us that likely created us, created everything we experience, has the ability to create, destroy, and do whatever it wants, even though in our reality we cannot create or destroy, and we cannot comprehend the true power and true nature of what that is.
Okay. Could you induct then that thing had to be created?
Nope.
Why not?
What do you mean?
Why wouldn't you induct that thing had to be, like, using inductive reasoning? What would you have to base on from actual observation that anything which created anything else was not itself created?
If we go by the standard laws of thermodynamics, that nothing is created or destroyed, only changed.
Yeah, but
so
even if that's
the
case, the energy which you're destroying or creating, right? God doesn't need to be created. No. He always existed, right?
And we were not created in the sense of we manifested. We were created in the sense that the universe was created by God. The structure, the energy, all of it was created. Whether it's finite or not is a determination of God that we don't know.
Well, do you think this thing has consciousness?
And then we organized. Absolutely.
Okay, so it's doing it on purpose?
Absolutely. So
with a purpose?
Presumably. So consciousness, we are in the universe, and we are components of the universe, and what we experience as conscious entities is a component of the universe, which also implies the universe itself, with us within it and within its confines and laws, experiences consciousness either through us, or there is a very, I believe, obvious observation that if simple consciousness, the neurons firing in our brains, which we think is what's generating consciousness, exists, then obviously there is a calculation of a higher power consciousness beyond ours.
Well, what does it want?
I don't know.
Why did it put you here?
There's a couple ideas that I have on that. One is you can describe it as a sorting algorithm, I suppose. Why do heaven and hell exist? Well, the Christian...
You think hell exists too?
Absolutely. But I wouldn't describe it as fire and pits of inferno. I would describe it as, if we look at the universe and we look at the choices we are given, free will, and we take a look at, I would say, trying to learn off Christian or just general religious dogmas, because I do believe that humans and life has a general understanding until it's socialized out of them or they're broken from it. I do believe people can know God exists, but society today tries to make you erase that from your mind.
Well, this is really strange, though. You think we have free will too?
Yes, absolutely.
You don't think it's predetermined?
There's gradients. Yeah, no, it's not predetermined. There's an element of predetermination in that some things will happen, and then how we function within them is ultimately the function of reality. Now, I don't know that, obviously, but I would say based on what I've read, what I've seen, what I've experienced, a simple way to describe it is we are here as sort of a test. We are given choices. We are given free will. We're given opportunity. We are given struggles, and we make choices on how we exist within these things. Do you choose to be evil for self-gain, to burn things down and destroy? If all life, is functioning towards the creation of complex systems, that it would seem to defy God's will to be a force of entropy. So when you look at Antifa burning things down, destroying that, I describe that as evil. When you look at Democrats exploiting to steal and make gains for themselves, they are empowering a small system at the destruction of a larger system. I would call that evil. If the purpose of a person or if the function of a person is to create more complicated systems, i.e. create life, protect life, and expand upon life, that seems to be God's will, as that is what life does. So there's a sort of yin-yang of the universe. I don't believe it's balanced like yin-yang. I believe it's more like the golden ratio spiraling towards negative, towards entropy, with life functioning as negative entropy. And thus, simply put, there is a God. We are here for a reason. We are here to protect, to organize, to create, and develop and expand.
So what if you end up in a situation where you have Aztecs who are cutting the...
You stop them.
Oh, hang on. Cutting...
Okay, I think that's about where it's going to stop. The last note he left out on was Pretty interesting. Let me just recap real quick.
Or if the function of a person is to create more complicated systems, i.e.
Right, he believes that because life is always trying to find a way to make itself more complicated and continue and keep going, this is a reflection of God's will. He also believes that God exists with outside of us as a higher being with a purpose, with a mission. And this mission is obviously just complex life. So because of that, because we see it in nature so much, anything against that would now become evil. But I don't believe in evil. I don't believe in good. I just believe in results. And in order for there to be more complicated life, something has to die. For instance, the most popular evolution model suggests that before animals were able to come up out of the ground, there had to be grass first. There had to be vegetation on the surface first. They couldn't just walk out onto rock because they would have, one, nothing to eat, nothing to breathe. There would be very limited resources up there. So it's believed that there was first topsoil, and then those die, and those create enriched nutrients, and now you get bigger things because there's more nutrients in these dead dead organisms. But an organism is nothing but a compile of matter, a compile of things that make things alive. So now that this thing is dead, there's even more resources available through its death that can inspire the next generation, feed the next generation, and the generation that feeds off of that will become bigger and stronger. That's how you get bigger and stronger complex systems, because of the things that died before, the things that came before it. Of course, it's hard to have this kind of conversation. The nature of God, the nature of existence, the nature of consciousness could never be fully understood, but I really hope people start to break away from this old worldview that there's some man in the sky named Yahweh who has a will, whose also name is Jesus, who will kill you, but he also loves you, so don't get it confused. He loves you, but don't fuck with that nigga, because he will burn you forever, so don't do that. Also, this God is jealous and like very happy at the same time. He's a jealous God. What is he jealous of exactly? So there's big cracks in God's nature, and hopefully just this conversation helps you realize a little bit more about that. Andrew did not, in my opinion, he did not do a very good job of defending his world point. It kind of crumbles down. It's very cyclical. His nature, his worldview informs itself. God wouldn't do that, so that also means God couldn't do that. Why God couldn't do that? Because God said he wouldn't do that. So it's like, dude, you know this isn't real logic. You know that's cyclical as hell. But anyway, I might have more videos like this talking about some more deeper subjects, crashing out on that instead of crashing out on random people trying to find love. We still gonna talk about dating and stuff like that, but hopefully you feel me on this stuff too, because this is something I'm very passionate about, and I can talk about this all day for real. I'm very passionate, very educated. I wouldn't even say educated because I don't hold any degrees or anything, but very informed. I'm very informed on these subjects, on metaphysics, on consciousness, spirituality, philosophy. Like I've spent a great deal of my life trying to figure these things out. So I hope you can hear me. I hope this brings you a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more light, hopefully some joy to your day too. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, because I might have more coming for you. And stay warm, stay blessed, stay whatever's going on. I hope it's whatever. Jesus, whatever's going on, I hope it's going the best for you. Until next time, guys.